Picture this. You're sitting on the couch, half awake, a coffee or maybe a beer in your hand, watching the Socceroos walk out onto the pitch. It's 4 a.m., you're just watching it on a screen. But then, that real fantasy hits you, doesn't it? What if you were actually there? What if you traded that bleak early morning living room experience for the visceral thrill of standing right there in the stadium, shoulder to shoulder, singing along with your mates as it happens live? I mean, it's the absolute ultimate dream for any Australian football fan. But almost instantly, that dream is followed by a very sobering second thought. Yup, the burning question that stops most of us dead in our tracks. Can an average Aussie actually afford to follow the Socceroos through the group stage of the 2026 World Cup without entirely wrecking their finances? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down every single dollar it takes to fly out of Sydney or Melbourne, survive the group stages, and get back home with your bank account somewhat intact. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Flights and Internal Travel. Okay, so geography is our very first major hurdle here. The 2026 World Cup isn't just taking place in one country, it's this massive logistical beast spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So to figure out the cost, we really have to trace the exact route. The Socceroos have landed in Group D, and they've got a very specific path carved out across the North American West Coast. You're going to start in Vancouver against Turkey on June 14th. Then you cross the border down to Seattle to face the U.S. on June 20th. And finally, you'll head south to Santa Clara, right outside San Francisco, to play Paraguay on June 26th. So let's look at the baseline cost just to get across the Pacific. A return economy flight from Sydney or Melbourne to the West Coast in June 2026 is sitting roughly between $2,200 and $3,500 Australian dollars. Premium economy? That jumps to around $5,500, and business class is well north of $9,000. For a realistic budget, you need to lock in about $2,800 for a return economy ticket. That is your non-negotiable starting point. Unless you plan on swimming, or unless you've been religiously hoarding frequent flyer points for the last few years, which honestly is the only real way to wipe out this massive initial cost. But remember that West Coast route we just talked about? You aren't staying in one city. Jumping between Vancouver, Seattle, and Santa Clara really adds up. Domestic flights inside the US and Canada during the tournament are expected to surge by 40 to 60%. A simple short leg that usually costs $200 is easily going to hit $400. So to follow the team through all three group stage matches, you've got to budget a solid 1,200 Australian dollars just for internal flights. That means before you even look at a football, you're literally $4,000 in the hole. Which brings us to Section 2. The match ticket reality. If you thought the flights were steep, just wait until you see the cost to actually get inside the stadium. This is where FIFA's pricing has gone absolutely mental compared to previous tournaments. Just look at this comparison. Back at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, you could pick up a group stage ticket for around $55. Fast forward to 2026. While the absolute cheapest nosebleed seats start around $60, the moment you want a decent Category 1 seat, say for that massive game when Australia plays the host nation, the US, in Seattle, you are looking at $1,050. That is roughly 1,600 Australian dollars for just one single match. For all three group stage matches, assuming you actually want decent seats, you are realistically looking at spending between 2,400 and 3,500 Australian dollars. And here's the real kicker. You have to watch out for dynamic pricing. FIFA is using a model that adjusts ticket prices based on real-time demand. Think of it exactly like Uber's search pricing, but for World Cup tickets. If you buy at peak demand, those numbers are going to spike even higher. And just for a bit of jaw-dropping context here, a ticket to the final match has already pushed past the $10,000 mark. So unless you're prepared to sell a kidney on the black market, the final is strictly off the table. Oh, and a quick tip, don't forget that paying for any of these tickets in US dollars on an Australian credit card usually triggers a 3% foreign transaction fee. So go ahead and add another $100 or so to your bill just for the privilege of paying. Moving right along to Section 3, Hotels and Hidden Costs. Now we reach the part of the explainer where even the most carefully planned travel budgets really start to come off the rails. It's time to look at where you'll sleep, what you'll eat, and those boring but absolutely fatal hidden expenses. Hotels across the 16 host cities have skyrocketed. They're averaging an agonizing $499 a night, with some cities seeing a literal 300% markup. Thankfully, for the West Coast stretch the Socceroos are playing, if you stay slightly outside the main city centers, you can expect to pay between $250 and $400 Australian dollars a night. But look, even at a modest $300 a night over a 12-day group stage window, local Airbnbs and hotels are going to extract roughly 3,600 Australian dollars from your wallet. Then, of course, we have the sneaky budget killers. To get into the US, you need an ESTA, which is about $40. Because the first game is up in Vancouver, you also need a Canadian ETA for $7. You've also got to factor in food. Figure around $100 to $150 a day, and you cannot forget the unavoidable North American tipping culture. You'll be adding 15 to 20% on all your restaurant bills, taxis, and ride shares. You know that $50 burger and beer combo at the stadium? Yeah, you've got to add a tip to that too. But this right here is absolutely crucial. Travel insurance for 2 weeks in North America is completely, unequivocally essential. A decent policy costs between $150 and $250 Australian dollars. Seriously, do not skip this just to save a few bucks. Without insurance, American medical costs will financially ruin you. One twisted ankle or one bad day at the stadium turns your trip into a $50,000 nightmare. And yes, U.S. hospitals absolutely will use collection agencies to pursue international debt right inside Australia. All right, moment of truth. Section 4, the final tally. So we've looked at the baseline flights, the highly inflated match tickets, the search price hotels, the sneaky administrative fees, and the daily survival costs. It is time to bring it all together and reveal exactly what this dream is going to cost you. Let's walk through this realistic mid-range budget line by line. We've got our international flights at $2,800, internal North American flights to follow the team at another $1,200, 3 group stage match tickets in decent seats sit around $3,000, 12 nights of accommodation will be roughly $3,600. Visas and that vital travel insurance total $320, food and daily expenses add $1,500, and finally, local transport, Ubers, a new Socceroos jersey, and the inevitable stadium beers come to about $1,200. Add it all up, and the grand total for one Australian to comfortably follow the Socceroos through the group stage of the 2026 World Cup is 13,600 Australian dollars. Whew. Now, if you want to go extreme budget, I'm talking sharing hostel rooms, taking awful layover flight routes, and eating strictly from food trucks, you might squeeze this down to around $9,000. But on the flip side, if you want premium seats in nice hotels, you will easily blast right past $25,000.
Oh, and we absolutely have to mention the ultimate wildcard here. What if they actually play well and progress to the knockout stage? Making the round of 16 means extending your trip by another full week. It means booking last-minute internal flights to cities like Dallas or Atlanta. It means buying knockout stage tickets that instantly jump up to $1,400 a seat. If the boys make it through, you better be prepared to add another $3,500 to your budget on the fly.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, How to Fund 2030. Now, if seeing that $13,600 figure just made your heart completely sink, don't worry. Really, if 2026 is mathematically out of reach for you right now, it's just time to pivot the strategy. Because this goal becomes surprisingly achievable when you let time and compound interest do the heavy lifting for the 2030 World Cup. That one is co-hosted by Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, and it gives you a solid 4-year runway. To hit that roughly $13,600 target, you only need to save $65 a week. Step 1, open a separate, dedicated high-interest savings account. Step 2, set an automatic transfer of $65 the day your pay lands so you don't even see the money leave. Step 3, let the current 5 to 5.5% interest rates go to work for you. Over 4 years, the bank will essentially pay you $1,500 in free interest just for leaving it there. By 2030, your dream trip is fully funded. So, there you have it. We've broken down the exact cost of the 2026 World Cup dream, line by brutal line, and we've laid out a foolproof mathematical blueprint to guarantee your spot in 2030. The numbers are totally clear, the strategy is set, and those stadiums are waiting. The only question left for you to answer is, are you ready to start saving today, or are you just going to be watching from the couch at 4 a.m. all over again?